Something has been building under Tenerife since the night of July 22nd, and it is not stopping. The automatic processing systems of Spain's National Geographic Institute detected approximately 1,600 earthquakes beneath the Las Cañadas del Teide area since July 22nd, with around 600 of those recorded on Friday, July 25th alone. Not one day, not one swarm. A sequence that ended, restarted, intensified between 3 and 6 in the morning, then eased slightly before continuing. The swarm of repetitive events that began on the night of July 22nd ended around 3 p.m. on Thursday. Then, at 11:30 p.m., a new family of low-magnitude repetitive events began, which lasted throughout the early morning and intensified before slightly decreasing. And through all of this, the official volcanic alert level for Tenerife remains green. That gap between what the instruments are measuring and what the official status page is showing is exactly what has the scientific community, local residents, and independent volcanologists in open public disagreement right now. Not about whether an eruption is imminent, that question has a consistent answer from every credible scientific voice tracking this, but about whether the communication framework surrounding the volcano is telling the people of Tenerife what they actually need to know to prepare for whatever eventually comes. Start with the data itself, because the numbers matter more than the framing around them. The earthquakes are located in the western area of Las Cañadas del Teide, at depths between 10 and 15 kilometers, where this type of activity has been usual in recent months. During Thursday, the IGN manually located 191 earthquakes. And by Friday, another 122, with a maximum magnitude of 1.6. None of these events have been felt by people on the surface. None of them are large enough to cause damage. On those specific measurements, the official position that the activity is low risk in the short term is technically accurate, but those facts exist alongside a different set of facts that the same data reveals. InVulcan identified the July 3rd episode as the 14th hybrid event swarm detected in Tenerife since October 2nd, 2016, with earlier swarms recorded in October 2016, June 2019, June and July 2022, November 2024, August 2025, and multiple episodes in February 2026, 14 swarms in less than a decade. The frequency is increasing. February 2026 alone produced at least 7 separate episodes within a single month. Now, in the final week of July, a new sequence has produced 1,600 detected events in under 72 hours. To understand why the type of earthquake matters as much as the number, you need to know what hybrid events actually indicate. A standard volcano-tectonic earthquake is the cracking of rock under stress, a familiar geological process that happens everywhere near active faults. A hybrid event is different. It carries a dual signature in its seismic waveform, a high-frequency onset followed by lower-frequency energy, that tells seismologists 2 things are happening simultaneously: rock fracture and fluid movement. The main hypothesis points to the injection of magmatic fluids into the Teide hydrothermal system. In InVulcan's language, these swarms are associated with the injection of hydrothermal volatiles of magmatic origin. Translated into plain terms, something hot, pressurized, and volcanic is moving below Teide and creating escalating activity in the rock above it. The hydrothermal system is the key to understanding what all of this means and what it does not mean. Teide sits inside a structure called the Las Cañadas caldera, a roughly 16-kilometer wide collapsed crater formed by ancient eruptions. Beneath the caldera floor, a network of fractures and permeable rock holds water that has been heated by the volcanic system below. When magmatic gases, primarily sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, are injected into this hydrothermal reservoir from depth, they increase pressure in the system. That pressure increase creates the seismic activity being recorded now. Swarms of small earthquakes as fluids force their way through cracks in the rock, accompanied by the hybrid signal indicating both fracture and fluid movement. Scientists had already warned that the initial figure of 755 events in one earlier swarm was likely an underestimation, as many quakes were extremely weak and difficult to identify. Experts insist there are no signs of an eruption in the short or medium term, but close monitoring is being maintained. The alarm patterns preceding eruptions, seismicity felt over days or weeks, accompanied by notable deformations of the terrain, are not being detected. Seismicity remains low energy, ground bulging is very slight, and gas emissions, although increased compared to levels a decade ago, remain within the margins considered normal for an active volcano. That distinction between current behavior and pre-eruptive behavior is real and important. In the case of La Palma in 2021, the terrain reached a bulge of about 30 centimeters in the days leading up to the opening of the eruptive vents. Teide is not showing that. The ground deformation being recorded is slight. The gas emissions are elevated relative to a decade ago, but within what scientists describe as normal for an active volcanic system. The seismic activity, however extensive, is not felt at the surface and is not accompanied by the suite of converging indicators that typically define the approach to an eruption. But here's the question that independent volcanologists and local scientists are asking publicly and loudly in Spanish language publications and social media posts that have been circulating through the Canarian community this week. Is the threshold for raising the alert level appropriate for where the activity currently sits? And who decides? The volcanic traffic light system used in Spain runs from green through yellow and orange to red. Green means normal activity for an active volcanic system. Yellow means anomalous activity requiring enhanced monitoring. The local scientific community in the Canary Islands, independent from the national agencies, speaking to local newspapers and posting on science outreach platforms, has been arguing for weeks that the activity now being recorded crosses into territory that at minimum warrants a yellow designation. Their argument is not that an eruption is imminent. It is that the frequency, the type, and the escalating pattern of the swarms represent a level of unrest that a green alert was not designed to describe. Scientists explain that seismic swarms of this nature are relatively common in active volcanic systems. In Tenerife, low-magnitude earthquake sequences occur periodically as part of the island's natural geological behavior and, on their own, should not be interpreted as signs that volcanic activity is escalating towards an eruption. Experts emphasize that volcanic unrest is assessed using a wide range of monitoring parameters, rather than seismicity alone. That is the official position, and on its technical merits, it is defensible. The problem that independent observers are identifying is not that the technical assessment is wrong. It is that the communication framework reduces the entirety of a complex multi-parameter volcanic system to a single color, and that color is interpreted by the 150,000 residents of the southern Tenerife municipality of Adeje, where Teide's volcanic system is most relevant, as an all-clear signal rather than a monitoring status update. The economic context is impossible to separate from this conversation, and the people raising concerns are saying so explicitly. Tenerife received approximately 7 million tourists in 2025. The southern resorts surrounding Teide, Los Cristianos, Playa de las Americas, Costa Adeje, are some of the most visited tourist destinations in Europe. A change in volcanic alert status, even from green to yellow, generates headlines. Headlines generate cancellations. Cancellations generate pressure on local governments. And local governments in an island economy built almost entirely on tourism revenue face incentives that do not always align perfectly with precautionary communication about geological risk. The comparison being made publicly is to the Campi Flegrei caldera in the Naples region of Italy, where a volcanic system that has been in extended unrest has been managed through a series of graduated alert adjustments, while Italian authorities simultaneously manage the communication challenge of roughly 400,000 people living within the highest risk zone. In that case, the alert level reached yellow in 2012, where it has remained through multiple episodes of escalating unrest, with the Italian Civil Protection Authority at various points discussing whether the threshold for orange had been met. The parallel is imperfect. Campi Flegrei and Teide are different systems with different histories and different risk profiles, but the structural problem is the same. A volcanic system showing increasing activity surrounded by an economy that generates powerful incentives to keep the public framing as calm as possible. The Scientific Committee of Pavolca has been meeting to analyze the latest unusual signals detected by IGN's monitoring stations. The proper Teide earthquakes have come in two forms: isolated, weak activity around 10 km below Teide, and low-frequency earthquake swarms triggered by fluid pressure, occurring in the same region in the west of Las Cañadas, at depths of 8 to 14 kilometers. What the seismograms being published by monitoring agencies show right now is a system producing repeated pulses, not a single event, not a random scatter of background noise, but a pattern of energy release that has been intensifying across 2026 with the February swarms, the July 3rd hybrid episode, and now the July 22nd to 25th sequence of one next 100 on 600 events. Each of those episodes ends, the system quiets for a period, then another pulse begins. The question that the instruments cannot answer, and that no scientific tool currently available to human beings can answer with any reliability, is how many more pulses there are before the system either stabilizes and reduces its activity or crosses into a phase that would justify a higher alert. What is not in dispute is that Teide is an active volcanic system that will erupt again. The historical record is unambiguous on that point. The last flank eruption at Teide occurred in 1909 at Canary in the northwest of the island. The geological record shows eruptions occurring on timescales of decades to centuries. On a geological calendar, 116 years since the last eruption is not a long interval. On a human calendar, it is long enough that most of the people currently living on Tenerife have no lived memory of volcanic activity on their island. That absence of lived memory is part of what makes the communication challenge so difficult. The residents of La Palma who experienced the 2021 Tajagite eruption, which lasted 85 days, destroyed more than 3,000 buildings, and covered 1,000 hectares of land with lava, now have direct personal experience of what a Canary Island volcanic eruption means in practice. The residents of Tenerife, watching seismograms show 1,600 earthquakes in 72 hours while the official alert light stays green, are working with a different information environment entirely. Monitoring of Mount Teide and the rest of the Canary Islands volcanic systems has significantly strengthened in recent years, especially after the experience in La Palma. The IGN maintains a network of more than 100 monitoring stations across Tenerife. The data those stations are collecting is public. The gap is not in the instrumentation. The gap is in what the instruments are measuring versus what that measurement means for how prepared the population of Tenerife would be if the pattern currently being recorded eventually leads somewhere that requires a response. Teide is not erupting today. That is the accurate sentence, and it matters that it is stated clearly. The equally accurate sentence, the one that independent volcanologists are increasingly arguing deserves more space in the public conversation, is that Teide has produced 14 hybrid swarms since 2016, with the frequency of those swarms accelerating, in the most recent sequence generating 1,600 detected events across a 72-hour period that included multiple separate episodes and intensified bursts between 3 and 6 in the morning. Those two sentences are both true simultaneously. The question is whether the current alert framework is designed to communicate both of them, or only the first one.